We're going to talk Jack Flaherty, Colt Keith, and give you some injury updates. All today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Tuesday, February 25th, 2025. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen. Every single day, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That one was a long one. There was a, that one was probably a little too long on the wait on that one. That really made you work for that one. Welcome in. Happy Tuesday, everybody. The Detroit Tigers did not play baseball on Monday afternoon. The first spring training rainout for the Detroit Tigers in almost a decade. I think I saw that it was 2016. So it's been a while since we've had a rain out there in Lakeland at Joker Merchant Stadium. So no baseball to go over. However, we do have some spring updates from camp, a couple of injury updates, and we are going to preview Colt Keith and Jack Flaherty on today's show. So I'm going to start off with just the injury news and notes that we have received. I believe today, as you are listening to this on Tuesday, the Tigers will release their organizational rundown for the injury situation, the injury report, that's the word, that they always do every week. So we'll go over it again tomorrow when we have a little bit more information. But the two updates we got either over the weekend or on Monday are from Akil Baddoo and from Parker Meadows. I will tell you right now, if Parker Meadows misses any amount of time with an injury, I will freak out. I will cry. I will cry. Maybe even on air. I will have a breakdown. Please don't. Now, this is me being very overly dramatic, and I'm going to choose to listen to the organization and to AJ Hinch. AJ Hinch said he doesn't think it's a very big deal. They're doing further testing. He wasn't going to play anyway, precautionary, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to take that at face value and choose to believe it because I'm choosing peace in this moment. But if it ends up being anything more than this, I will cry. And so, yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. We don't really know anything else. It's a bicep injury. That's the only actual tangible report that we have. Chris McCoskey of the Detroit News is who I saw the report from. That's pretty much all we have, at least at the time of this recording, which is Monday in the early afternoon for me. So we will see what happens as far as that goes. I mean, I guess I'm glad it's arm as opposed to leg, just given how much value comes from the, his legs. I don't know. I guess there's not really too much else to talk about other than hope it's nothing serious. And hopefully it is just precautionary and they're going to run tests just to make sure and that it ends up not being anything crazy. Akil Baddoo also had an injury label, I guess, is marked down for an injury. Not really sure where I was going with that transition. It sounded a lot better in my head. He will be out for spring training, however, was complaining to the Tiger staff about hand soreness. Turns out he has a broken bone in said hand, and it doesn't sound like he'll be out for a ton. They're kind of chalking it up to a month or two from now, and you have almost a month of that is spring training. So he will be out for the spring. He will not play in spring training games. However, pretty quickly when the minor league season starts, which is even a little bit after, obviously, the major league season, he probably won't be held out too much into the regular season, which is great news. A guy that obviously is no longer on the 40-man, but is still getting camp invites, is still somebody that, if an outfielder or two get hurt, he's going to get added to the 40-man. He's going to be right back into the mix. So we obviously all rooting for him, and is a fan favorite here and a great story and whatnot. So hopefully he can get healthy and that doesn't really get in the way, I guess I'll say, of his season very much. That's pretty much it for news out of camp. At the end of the show, I'll talk about the new pitching alignment now that they are not playing, obviously, on Monday afternoon. So kind of the pitching forecast that I gave you on yesterday's show is now no longer true. So we'll update you with that. But the rest of the show is going to be player previews. We have Jack Flaherty and Colt Keith to talk about today. Let's start with Jay Flair. Last season with your Detroit Tigers and I almost said your Los Angeles Dodgers. That probably would have upset a lot of people. Glad I didn't pull the trigger on that one. I had a fantastic year, though. Probably, I don't even think it's probably, like, pretty objectively, I think the second best season of his career. Obviously, his best year, hard to top that 2019 when he was a Cy Young candidate, had a top 5 finish in Cy Young voting. But this is, I think, pretty comfortably his best year outside of that season. In total, had a 3.17 ERA in 21 starts, pitched 162 innings, had a 1.068 whip, a K per 9 of almost 11, a walk per 9 of about 2. I mean, he was really firing on all cylinders. And I think it's fair to use the phrase, like, figured it out. We talk about his great 2019. In the years from 2020 up until he was a Tiger in the start of the 2024 season, so 2020 through 2023, he was either injured or struggling pretty consistently. Had an ERA of about 5 in 2023, only appeared in 9 games in 2022. I mean, it was, and then like 2020 was weird / rough for everybody. Only 78 innings in 2021. Like just really a roller coaster, I guess, is a fair way to put it. But just like not a lot of positive moments for him in that stretch. But because he debuted at such a young age, 22 years old was his first full season in the majors and was 4th in Cy Young voting in 2019 at 23 years old. Last year, he was only 28. This year, still not even 30 years old. And I think that there is a lot of reasons to be really excited about the return of Jack Flaherty in an Old English D. We will talk about that and more right after this. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back tomorrow, hopefully actually talking about a spring training baseball game, and obviously continuing our player preview series as well. Today, talking about Jay Flair and Colt Keith, two pretty interesting cases. Jack Flaherty gets traded away, then comes back. Colt Keith trying out a new position for the first time in his professional career, probably the first time in his life, period, over at first base in what is going to only be his second season. Talking about Flaherty right now, I mean, was in the 90th percentile in K rate, 91st percentile in swing and miss rate, 83rd in lowest walk rate. Wasn't walking very many people, striking out a lot of people. That's exactly what you want on a consistent basis, believe it or not. The only thing that really jumps out at me is going into next season, this season, I should say, I would like to see him improve against right-handed hitters. I just think there's no excuse for him to not be better against righties. He has plenty of seasons under his belt where he has been better against righties than lefties. But he's never been like a guy that really struggles immensely against left-handed hitters either. Had a great year against lefties in 2024. And that's also not to say that he was garbage against righties in 2024 either, but like a 730 OPS against right-handed hitters, I don't know. Like, I think with how good his fastball looked, how good his slider looked, and with how objectively dominant his curveball was, with him being a right-handed pitcher, there is zero reason in my eyes for him to not be honestly like comfortably better against right-handed hitters going forward. And part of that is just slider usage. Nobody really hit his curveball. It was dominant against righties and lefties. I think he only gave up 1 home run total on it all year, and it was to a lefty, sub 200 batting average against. Really effective pitch, kind of that knuckle curve, power curve type of thing he throws. What was incredible. Like, legitimately was one of the better curveballs in baseball in 2024. It's awesome that that's coming back. One of the reasons why it was so good was because A, the fastball improved, a little bit different movement on his fastball in 2024 than we had seen in previous years. We don't have enough data to like, for my, like perfectionist brain to really compare and contrast how his fastball moved back in 2019 versus today. But like, from what we have over the data we have over the last few years, it does seem like it was a slightly different shape and that they were trying to achieve something different with it. We have talked about like IVB before on this show and just like vertical break in general over the last couple of years, and how kind of unique of a metric it is, because you can be really good at it with a really low number, or you can be really good at it with a really high number, and it's almost like the median is kind of like the dead zone that you don't want to be in. So I think that they were just trying to get him more out of that than anything else. But whatever they did, whatever Feder did when he got his hands on him in spring training of 2024, clearly worked wonders. And this is the best version of his fastball we have seen, I would argue, in 5 years since that 2019 season. Really good velocity as well, back up to that, 93, 94, even, I mean, I think he averaged just under 95 miles an hour with his four-seamer last year against right-handed hitters rather. So all of that to say, I know I just kind of like rambled there and blabbed off about metrics and whatnot. All of that is to say that I think he has the arsenal, and again, he literally is a righty, to just be much better against right-handed hitters. And I think part of that is just the slider, like I was saying before I went off on a fastball tangent. Talked about all the other pitches in his repertoire. The slider is a good pitch. It's really effective. It was a good swing and miss pitch for him last year. But it also, when he hung it, got absolutely crushed. And when you have a really good fastball and a really good, like, elite level curveball, it's frustrating to get hit as hard as he did with the slider. Now, that the slider didn't have like bad numbers against it, right? Again, it had a lot of swings and misses, a low 200 batting average against, but when it did get hit, it got hit hard. The numbers against it in terms of how hard the ball was hit, or just like his slug against his slider, I mean, 455, which in comparison to the the rest of his entire repertoire is leaps and bounds higher than everything else. 11 home runs on the slider, the most given up by any pitch in his repertoire as well, which is saying something because he threw 200 fewer of them. Sorry, 400 almost, throw 350 fewer sliders than he did fastballs. So I know that's like a lot of numbers and a lot of like pinpointing that I'm doing here. I'm not trying to like overwhelm you with data. But I just feel like that is something that is very obtainable for him to do. And that is, again, on top of what already was a great year. Like, that's me being super nitpicky. This guy was phenomenal. Like I said, 3.17 ERA, but with the Tigers before the trade, had a 2.95 ERA and then had a 3.58 in LA. The biggest thing, and what this will be the end of the Flaherty conversation, because I don't really think there's too much else to say. He's really good. He figured it out, and he gets swings and misses a ton. He's going to be the number 2 in this rotation pretty objectively. The biggest thing with him is just, can you keep him on the field? And I don't say that to be like, oh, like you get hurt all the time, haha. Like, I mean, you just look at the innings that he has thrown in his career. It's 151 his rookie year, just under 200 that 2019 Cy Young caliber season. 2020, COVID, doesn't really count for anybody, 40 innings. 2021, 78. 2022, 36 innings. 2023, 144, but he had a 5 ERA. And then 2024, 162 innings. So this last year was comfortably the highest usage he had in half a decade. And so it's really important for him to just stay on the field. We saw a couple of times last year before he was even traded, when he was still a Tiger, we're going to skip his start in the rotation this time around, and he's going to get that back injection. That's been a huge issue for him over the last several seasons. And so I think it's really important for him to just stay healthy. And that goes without saying. Like, I'm not telling you something you don't already know. I'm not telling you something I'm positive doesn't already know and isn't in the back of his mind. But that's really the biggest question mark, is just how many innings are you going to get out of him? If you can push 180 innings out of him again, I really think you're going to get an all-star caliber season from Jay Flaherty in 2025. Let's talk about Colt Keith, okay? Because this is one of the biggest storylines in spring training and will be one of the biggest storylines to keep an eye out for this season. As we are all very well aware at this point, Colt Keith is moving to first base for the 2025 season. We'll see if that sticks and ends up being a long-term thing or not. But they signed Gleyber Torres. He notoriously only wants to play second. That means Keith has to move somewhere. Third base, even though he came up as a third baseman, I don't think is really in the cards long-term. Ever since that arm injury he had in the minors a few years back, his arm strength really just, I don't think, is up for task at third base, which means the natural move then is to look at first base. And because Torkelson has not performed very well in his major league career outside of the second half of 2023, I think that there's a pretty big, not only at the major league level, but organizationally, right? And like, you have some guys like Lorenzo could or could not stick at catcher, be first base. Briseño, similar conversation, right? Obviously, we'll see how both of them continue to develop. But, before Scott Harris came in, the organization kind of just like moved everybody off of first base and was like, Torkelson, he's a 1-1 pick. Like, Torkelson's it. We're not really going to develop anybody else to play first base. So I think the move can be beneficial for Keith. I think I also need to see a lot from him for me to have confidence in that going forward. I'm not really sure if that's something I want to pigeonhole him into at this point in his career, especially, and we'll start, I guess, with the defense since we're already talking about it so much. He improved a lot defensively at second base as the season went along. And I mentioned this a few times in the offseason. Like, I'll live with the move to first base for 1 year. I'm okay with that. But I really do think that Colt Keith's value is in the future at its highest if he can play second base. And again, it wasn't smooth sailing necessarily, and he started off really poor in the field and at the plate for that matter in 2024. But he took massive strides on the defensive side of the ball as the season went along. And by the end of the year, actually was like a borderline league average defender at second base. Has a lot of really good range and ability there because he's athletic as heck. It's really just a question mark of, glove work and footwork when receiving the ball more than anything else. So I think, I'm okay with first base. As far as how he'll do there, I think there's still a lot more that we have to see. I think that's a big question mark. If you're looking for like a projection or a prediction of him defensively, he has all the tools necessary to be a good defensive first baseman. He is athletic. He can provide a lot of range there. He can get to the bag quickly. He has the ability to play elsewhere in the diamond. A lot of times will lend itself to a player when they go to first base, like helping them with picking the ball and whatnot. So hopefully that's something that reigns true. And he doesn't have to rely on his arm at all. So, like, the weakest part of his defense is a non-factor at this new position, which is one of the reasons why I feel like they felt comfortable moving him to first base. So I still have a lot of questions, but as far as, on paper, he should be able to be a good defensive first baseman. Now, I've said that about Torkelson for 3 years. So, like, we know that that's not necessarily Torkelson's elite at picking the ball. I have to say that every time because somebody always brings it up. But, like, outside of picks, Torkelson has struggled mightily defensively at first base in his major league career. I think last year was comfortably the best year of his career, and it wasn't even that great still. So, like, we'll see. We'll see the product on the field. But I think if anybody on the current, projected major league roster can be a really good first baseman that hasn't played first base yet for the Tigers, it is probably Colt Keith. So I have faith there. I just do have legitimate question marks about whether that is the best path forward for the team. I mean, obviously you want what's best for Colt Keith going forward because he's the player and he's the one providing. But, like, I don't know. Maybe it's just McGonigal. You shift over and have play second long term. I'm sure he'll get a conversation to be had at third. Hao-Yu Lee, second/third as well. Maybe Keith does just stick at first. If he's really good there, then this conversation's null. And I just wasted 5 minutes of all of our time, right? Like, if he's incredible there, and it's like, oh my goodness, this is clearly his natural position. This guy is a huge positive defender and whatnot. I'm not saying like Gold Glove caliber, but like if he's a big time plus defender there, then there you go. There's your answer, and we can move on. So let's move on to the offense. We'll do that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is the best, and when the game tips off, the NBA action is truly just getting started. There's no better place to get in on all that action at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting features because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets. If your first $5 bet wins, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com to shoot your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in, as always. So kind of talked about the defense with Colt Keith. Let's talk about the offensive side of the ball here. Really interesting year. There was a lot that I liked and a lot that I didn't like from Colt Keith's rookie season at the plate. Really liked how he sprayed the ball all over the field. The fact that he wasn't necessarily heavy pull, heavy push, right? Like, he really did just kind of take what was given to him. And I think that that is a good skill to have, a unique skill to have, and can be extremely beneficial in today's era of baseball. So the fact that his spray chart is kind of as evenly distributed as it is, I think is great. Really all of his power came from the pull side. And that I'll talk about why I think that is here in a second. But the ability to put the ball in play, get knocks kind of in any direction is obviously a skill that we like, and I'm glad he has. And was one of the better projected contact hitters in the game last year. Was in the 80th percentile in expected batting average at 266. How this game has changed, right? Top 20% is 266. Very, very different game than it was just 20, 25 years ago. His actual batting average was 260, so that's the reason I bring that up. Very similar to the expected based on, launch angle and average exit velocity and whatnot. So 309 OBP to go with that 260 average, a 380 slug. That's a 689 OPS, and then with 13 home runs, 7 stolen bases, and like I said, we already talked about the defense. The biggest frustration I had with Colt Keith is the lack of power. And I'm sure that that's something he is working on and he is making adjustments on to get him back to where he should be. When I watched this dude take at bats in the minor leagues, it was an event. Okay, I need to really articulate how good and how much better than everyone else Colt Keith was when he was in double, and then once he adjusted and got acclimated to AAA. Something that we brought up a lot last year, especially after his slow start, was this dude has kind of notoriously gotten off to slow starts after promotions, and then once the timing is there and is clicking and he's figured it out, he kind of takes off. I'm waiting for the takeoff still. He had a really good, what was that, May or June, where he had like an 1,000 OP. I think it was June for a month. But then, the numbers went back down and he was around a 700 OPS for most of the season and pretty consistently in the second half. He was somewhere between that like 680 to 710 OPS mark every single month. So it's good that he is adjusted to the point where, competitive at-bats every time out there, can at least, again, has the ability to put the ball in play really any time. But I am waiting for the power to come through. A 380 slug is low. And like, not just like, that's low for Colt Keith, that's low, period. And like, if he is to be the first baseman of the future, if it truly is like, hey, this is a long-term thing, assuming he's even remotely sound there defensively, then he needs to hit for a lot more power. We need that slugging percentage to skyrocket. Certainly be on the other side of 400, if not get into that like 420, 430 range. And the reason that, or not, I shouldn't say reason, one of the ways that he can improve upon that is just improving his ability to hit non-fastballs. Now, he hit fastballs really well. 317 batting average against four-seam fastballs, had a slug of 413. So, like, only 2 home runs against those. Not uber power numbers, but like, you look at the slider, and this is one of my biggest points about Colt Keith. A 231 average against the slider, 385 slug, and a whiff of over 30%. In the minor leagues, it was a joke, a literal joke among the fan base. Like, Colt Keith does not swing and miss at sliders. He hits every slider that was thrown to him in the minor leagues. And for those numbers to look the way they do, I'm really banking on year 2, a year under his belt of adjusting and getting the timing down. I think that you can see a large improvement in his ability to hit sliders. Just 2 home runs, just 6 extra base hits on the whole season off of the slider in 2024. I think that that's an area where he can get a lot better. And the last point I have on his offense is kind of like a cliche, and it's kind of a very non-analytical point of view. But like, just some swagger and confidence, man. That one swing he took in Cincinnati was just oozing with swag, right? Like, just absolute aura. And for him to look how he did in the confidence he had in AAA, and like, it's a totally different ballgame. The jump from AAA to the majors is the biggest in sports. Like, it's astronomical. I can't even fathom it. And I'm the one here talking about it. Like, I want to drive that point home too. But like, he was so confident in his abilities every time he stepped in the batter's box when he was in the minor leagues, and he crushed the baseball. And I 100% believe that caliber of hitter is within him. That major league caliber of hitter is within him. Like, I don't think last year is the offensive production we're going to get from Colt Keith forever. I'm expecting a big step forward. If you're asking my preview for Colt Keith, what I'm expecting from him, I'm expecting a big effing year. Straight up, man. I am really, really excited for Colt Keith. I think him moving to first base can only, honestly, in the short term, like, could help him because of all of the adjustments he had to make in the field at second base in 2024. I think if he is sound defensively there, and that leads to him being a more confident player and just being more confident at the plate, you could see the explosion happen this season, and that is what I want. That is what I'm expecting. This dude's a dog. He's one of the best minor league hitters I have ever seen in the Tigers organization, literally in my lifetime. There is a way better hitter in there than a 689 OPS and a 380 slug. Way better. Didn't strike out a ton. It didn't swing and miss a lot. Could raise the walk numbers, I bet. I bet. I do bet. I guess is what I was trying to say, though. But even if he has a walk rate around 6.5%, 7.5%, and that's below league average, if he hits how he actually can hit, then that's fine. The dude used to go up there with the presence of, like, I'm not here to F around. Like, I'm not here to draw a walk. I'm here to do damage. And he did a boatload of damage. And I am really excited for him now with, again, a year under his belt to really showcase that offensive ability that all of us were so excited about when he got promoted. Got to be able to stick at first base, though. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We, of course, will be back tomorrow, hopefully talking about a baseball game and previewing more players for the upcoming season. I appreciate you all greatly. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch you all tomorrow, baby. Go Tigers.